Hello and welcome to Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable, where I discuss the future of the Niger-Delta region, humongously blessed with hydrocarbon resources and every other kind of resource you can imagine. Of course, her number one resource is her people, and that's why every week we give time to reflecting on topics relevant to the development of the Niger-Delta and those people I referenced earlier on. Now, this episode is no different as we're here once again to focus on how to take this region to a more promising future. The podcast is sponsored by the operator of the NNPC SPDC Total Energies Ajib joint venture, the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited, headquartered here in Port Harcourt. Many thanks for joining. I'm Adedayo Ilushakin. The topic for this episode is there fairness in the world? Now, every year on February 20, the world comes together to recognize the importance of social justice in promoting peace, security, and development. Now, this day is dedicated to addressing issues like poverty, exclusion, gender inequality, unemployment, human rights, and social protections. But what does fairness really mean in the context of social justice? Is there fairness in the world today? How do we measure it? And what can we do to promote it? In this episode, we'll explore these questions and more. We'll look at historical and current examples of fairness and unfairness, share personal stories possibly, and discuss the role of governments, NGOs, and international organizations in promoting social justice. We'll also delve into different philosophical perspectives on fairness and justice. So, stay tuned as we embark on this important conversation about fairness and social justice. Again, our topic on this episode of Canvas is there fairness in the world? My guest is Professor Ritchard Wokocha. Professor Ritchard Wokocha is an Associate Professor of Public Law at the Rivers State University here in Rivers State. Professor Wokocha, hello to you. Welcome to Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable.
Thank you, Dayo.
I should mention this. I've had the privilege of interviewing you severally on radio over quite a number of years.
Yeah.
And every single time you're satisfied with me introducing you with just that one line. Even though I'm quite certain you're a man of numerous accomplishments. But it speaks to your, and this is no flattery, it speaks to your circumspection, speaks to your great humility as well. Thank you very much for making our time to be here today.
Thank you, Dayo. We come into the world as just we, so it's enough to just mention our born name and it addresses us, and we get on with the deal. We thank God for everything.
Every conversation I've had with you, especially on matters related to this and also of the legal profession, but if I may say, even that of the legal profession tends towards matters addressing fairness, equity, and social justice as well, has always been extremely revealing, enlightening for me, and quite robust. And I'm certain that we'll have quite the conversation on this podcast as well.
I hope so. I look forward to that.
Let's start with maybe the most obvious question. As far as this recording is concerned, what is social justice?
Social justice refers to justice for society. Every time we have a conversation and we are talking of society, you are speaking within the context of the interest of the organized society and the interest of the constituents of the organized society. So when we speak of social justice, we are talking of giving to everybody and every segment in the society their due and what they have earned. And so social justice refers to that concept of fairness to everybody, fairness to every sector in the society.
I'm glad you used the word fairness because in crafting, when I was thinking about the subject matter and pre-producing this recorded, the word fairness came up, and in my introduction earlier on, I used the word fairness as well.
Yeah.
Somewhat in relation to social justice. But ever so often in conversations, you hear people say that life is not fair, and make similar or employ similar expressions.
Yeah.
Now, that said, if life is not fair, and some might even say that's a wise expression, some would say so, can we expect fairness? Is there fairness in the world? And by extension or as a result, can we expect social justice if fairness is related to social justice?
Well, first, fairness is being equitable. It's given to everybody in any circumstance they are due. Can we expect fairness within the context of society? Answer ought to be yes. When we say life is not fair, we refer to the fact that sometimes you do so much and you get just so little for the energy you have put in. Some people do very little and they get so much. So you begin to weigh the two and you ask yourself, why should one invest so much and get so little when others can invest a little and get more? Within that context, we say life is not fair. But when it comes to society, it ought to be a different thing. Societies operate by policies that are formulated deliberately by the governments that operate those societies. So we can expect from society something different from what we experience in real life, because the circumstances that inform the outcome of our efforts in real life that leads to life is fair and life is not fair includes a lot of variables that are not under our control. But when it comes to social justice, since it has to do with policies formulated by government, policies can target specific results. So we expect something better than the natural one, which is informed by peculiarities, including chance and luck and the rest of them. So yes, we can have a just society because it is planned. It's a collective formulated thing, the outcome of which should depend on how the policies are formed and implemented. I should think it's easier for any serious-minded society to achieve social justice than for an individual to get justice within the context of his faith in society or what he's experiencing in society.
I imagine that social justice or fairness does exist in certain societies.
Yes.
But like you said, or as you said, it is planned. And it is brought about by policies, deliberate planning and policies, not just thought up, but also
Implementing them
by the government in those societies.
Yes.
Now, if it was planned, it means there existed a time when it may not have existed, or it wasn't planned for,
Exactly.
so to speak.
Exactly.
Historically speaking, then, how has social justice been an issue in societies such that we came to a point where people began to plan for it and realized that, hey, we do need social justice?
You know, I like to, in the class, tell students that when we talk of the organized society, we must look at it within the context of experience and history. The first of all the units of the modern society must be the individual. Whether you believe in creation or you believe in evolution or any other thing, the first must be the individual. And it is the coming together of individuals that forms communities. And the coming together of communities that have some connection, either historical, social, or economic, that constitutes larger political societies, and eventually, where they are independent of any other state, that constitutes a sovereign state. So if the individual is the first in time and the key figure, therefore, in modern society, what it means is that we have developed along the line from pursuing private interests to pursuing collective interests. As a free being, a free agent, you will do what you like, conquer your environment in pursuit of your objectives. But when you come into a community where you live with others, there must be some rules. There must be some boundary to how far you can go in pursuit of your own interest, because you have to respect the interest of the other man who is in society. So coming into a society imposes on man the responsibility to respect the rights and boundaries of others and to make certain contributions. For instance, if there is an alarm, he has to come out. If they don't all come out, they will be overwhelmed one by one. So the very idea of the free man coming into society imposes on him responsibilities which did not exist before that time, and so on and so forth to the sovereign state. At each stage of political development, we acquire more responsibilities, we acquire more interest, we also acquire more protection, because the benefit of coming into society is to increase our protection and increase our chances of having an environment in which we can self-realize without the difficulties we face as an individual. If I stand alone, a stronger man comes, as a section in the passage in the Bible says, a stronger man comes, he overwhelms me and takes mine and what belongs to me. But if I stand with others, a stronger man who comes and meets a multitude or a population of people who are working in the same direction will be overwhelmed by the collection of people. So the very essence and the key essence why man went into society is to find greater protection for himself and create a more enabling environment for himself. So across the line, at every stage of our political development, as individuals, we have had to take on more responsibilities. So it's understandable that up to date, at every stage, we have had to do more. We have had to realize that, to succeed at this stage, we need to plan certain things. It was okay at the gathering stage to go into the bush and gather fruits. It was okay to go into the bush and hunt a few animals. But as we developed, it became necessary for us to farm, deliberately plan what we need to eat the next year, plant, water them, tend them, and make sure that within our farm we have enough to take care of next year. That's planning. That's deliberate planning. So we are moving away from the incidence of being under the control of nature to designing our own nature, designing our own future. So it's been the same thing. You had the agrarian society, you had the early society where strength was everything and men were in control and everything was man. But between your childhood and now, you have noticed a lot of difference. In Shell, there are a lot more women working than at the time we were born. In all parts of society, you can find that there is greater presence of women. In virtually every family in our society, the woman is no longer just tending children in the house and cooking in the kitchen. They are no longer limited to the other room and the kitchen activities. They are earning income. Some families are even sustained by women. So at each stage of development, we find new realities and certain things become necessary that we are not necessary. So you have to plan. In the past, especially within our societies, post-colonial societies, we try to train the men because we believe that the men will do the work, the men will get into government, formulate policies and all that. We have grown to the stage where we know that we run a risk if we train only men and leave women, because a society that is based on only one side of the gender, it's like trying to wash your hand with one palm. You will do very little compared to when you wash with the two palms. So we have increased our investment in development of women. We have tried to create greater role for women. We have found the necessity to take care of the elderly, to encourage those who are young to put in their best to the development of the society, knowing that when old age comes, we have a scheme for taking care of them. So we have not left everything to chance. We have now formed a pattern of planning. And in fact, in more responsible societies, they do not even just plan for the year. You don't talk of only annual budgets. There are 5-year development plans, 10 years development plans, 50 years, 100 years development plans in advanced societies. Excuse me. The reason why the race for space is going on is that the societies that are advanced enough to engage in that race to the space are looking at far future. The possibility of having colonies in those areas, expanding their sources of resources, and the possibility of moving people to those places and all of that. These are long-distance plans. So mankind has gone beyond the level of being left to nature and being left to chance and has decided to take his destiny in his own hand. And as they say, the best way to create a beautiful future, the best way to create your future is to create one yourself. The best way to have a good future is to create one yourself. So instead of waiting for chance and waiting for what may come. You decide what you want in 2026, you decide what you want in 2030, and you work towards them. So for our society, it's the same thing. We have moved from leaving things to chance to planning things deliberately because we now find it necessary.
That's it. Especially for those societies that do have social justice and fairness, and,
Yes.
and for them it's a priority.
Yeah.
How have they moved? How did they make that transition to first understanding the need for it and then its implementation? And this question also could serve, or your response to this question would serve as a blueprint as well for the societies that maybe have not reached understanding point yet, or have reached understanding point and need to move from there to implementation. So I think what I'm asking is, what's the mechanism for making that transition to understanding and then implementation?
You know, in every nation, whether advanced or not advanced, policies are informed by new realizations. The goals that are desired to be achieved is what informs the way policies are fashioned, the timeline for implementation, and their implementation. In more advanced societies, let's take the US and the UK, for instance, and such similar societies. You will notice that between the 19th century and the 20th century, the struggle for the suffragist struggle for gender equality, for instance, or giving more room of expression to the woman began. And somewhere along the line, they attained that you still have some few struggles in that particular aspect relating to equal pay for equal work and things like that, because there are still some minor differences in behavior of corporate organizations and workplaces within those areas. So you still have those minor, but the basic one of equal opportunity has been achieved through policies, deliberate policies that were designed to give more expression to the women folk. Prior to this time, they were just wives. Earlier than the 19th century, they were largely just wives. But government policies have now put what you call reverse discrimination policies and all that, ensuring that in certain work environments or workplaces, a certain percentage is reserved for women, so that gradually they can catch up. I think the United Nations says 30% or something like that. So societies are trying to move in that direction. And so by deliberate policies, deliberate laws, rooms have been created to improve the areas of society that government feels that society needs advancement into. The same thing with education. Several policies have been implemented both in advanced countries and here. We have not seen the results here the way we want, but elsewhere, you see that free education for primary is taken seriously and is implemented through policies. Every policy is laid through a law. So governments look at where they are, look at the problems they are facing, look at where they want to be tomorrow, and they formulate policies through laws of that society, of that legal system, as we call it, that create the room for what they want in order for them to get to where they want. In Nigeria, you have the Universal Basic Education Law. You have a number of other laws that are trying to give expression. In Rivers State, for instance, the issue of inheritance has been a Nigerian or African problem. And then you have laws that are designed to ensure that the woman can inherit equally with the man, giving expression to Section 42 of the Constitution, which talks about non-discrimination and all of that. So in every nation, laws are used to create the environment that the society desires in order to move in the direction it wants. Law is also said to be a tool of social engineering. So it doesn't just regulate affairs, it also moves society to where it wants society to be. And that is done by government enacting those laws that will create the opportunities that society is craving for to move towards.
Looking at the Nigerian space, and you may even narrow it down further, the Niger-Delta, one could say, depending on your perspective, that we do have systems and mechanisms in place to ensure social justice. Now, whether we have that social justice or not is it's a different conversation entirely. Now, that said, what are some of contemporary issues as regards to fairness that have constituted major challenges in our climate?
Well, generally in Nigeria, uh, since we're talking specifically now about Nigeria, generally in Nigeria, we've had a lot of social issues, especially discussing within the context of social justice. You know, the very idea of social justice is about ensuring that in making efforts to develop the society, that we do not sacrifice the interest of the units, the stakeholders within the society. It's about designing blueprints for advancing a country, for instance, without losing focus on the fact that the human beings that are within the country get fair treatment and equal opportunity to advance within the context of that advancement of society. So, for instance, we want more money, we want more resources in order for government to be able to do more. We must also ensure that within that policy by which we are trying to raise more resources, that citizens within Nigeria also get equal participation opportunity that will create for them too an opportunity to advance beyond where they are. So the very concept of social justice is ensuring that we develop society alongside with the units of the society, especially the human beings that are within that society. So for Nigeria, we've had a lot of social justice issues. I like to historically pinpoint our social justice polarization in Nigeria and increase in our social justice questions to the end of the First Republic. Even within the First Republic, you still had within regions some social justice issues. There were questions of social justice. You had the caste system that made some people less citizens than others, and those ones were therefore not entitled to what those who were called citizens were entitled to. I know it's not limited to us. Even within the Roman Empire, you had the freeborn and the slaves and all of that. But that was the character of our challenge at that time. And the regions made effort to plan development of their societies. And within that time, I think those efforts were more realistic, especially when you consider places like the Western region, where the core focus of economic activities within the Western region was cocoa production and exportation. You found that the policy created room for individuals to participate and earn, even as they were growing the economy of the Western region. Individuals were encouraged to farm cocoa, sell to the cocoa board. With what you get from the cocoa board, the government invests back in society, gives free education to children. Free education for children means relief for parents or citizens within that area from paying school fees for their children. Free health or assisted health also means reduction in expenses on the part of the individual. So you had a more positive, holistic social development policy within that context, that in trying to drive increased resources of the region also created room for citizens to improve their own resources or to increase their own resources. So in Nigeria, you have, as of today, we can say the particular social issues we are facing are issues of, first, you have the issue of security, which seems to be getting out of hand. Virtually all regions of Nigeria now have security questions. It's no longer limited to the Niger-Delta. Somehow the North has invented Boko Haram, ISIS, ISWAP, and the rest of them. All manner of things have come up on that side. So it raises question of security for members of society, Nigerian society, within those areas. We have government making effort to increase economic production, but there is no corresponding policy that is enabling citizens to benefit from that increase. As we described in the First Republic, where you saw government efforts also leading to individual creating room for individual participation. Now, our efforts at increasing oil production and revenue from oil production is not leaving room for participation by individuals. Yes, we'll have the, what was it called again? The act that encourages participation of citizens, indigents, in the economy, especially the oil economy. But
PIA?
no, not the PIA. Local content. Yeah, local content act. You have it, but you're not seeing the effect on the society. It has not led to any increased participation by citizens within the economic sector. That is the desire of that act. So as you said at the beginning of this question, policies may exist, but when you look at the goal of the policy, whether we are achieving them, we are not seeing the results. You have gender questions. You have our laws that actually speak contrary to the gender goals we want to achieve. You have unequal policy. You have our constitution that talks about citizenship. It allows a Nigerian who marries a foreign wife. It allows a wife, for instance, under Section 25, 6, and 27, especially Section 26 that deals with citizenship by registration. It allows a man that marries a foreigner. It allows the woman to register and become a Nigerian citizen, but it doesn't allow a Nigerian woman that marries a foreigner to have the man register as a Nigerian citizen. He has to come by naturalization under 27, which makes no sense. In Ghana, it speaks a neutral language. So any spouse to any Ghanaian, for example, as it is in other countries, can become a citizen, can apply for citizenship by registration. It's not the same with Nigeria. You have military rules that provide for freedom of marriage, but some consequences for having children within the military. So if a woman has to go on maternity leave, there is a limited time space, and there are things she has to lose. In fact, the law does not allow them to do those things within specific time frames. Those laws are specifically key towards gender inequality, and a lot of security, gender inequality, insufficient participation of citizens in economic activities, and a whole lot of other issues are dogging the Nigerian society at the moment. And this constitutes challenges to social justice.
We have to go for a break shortly. But before then, I'd like to just touch on very briefly, and like you to just explain very briefly some of the challenges you just mentioned and explained as well, of course.
Yeah.
You talked about economic inequality. How does that impact social justice in a society? I mean, everyone is not going to be rich.
Yeah.
Everyone is not going to, as we say, make it, so to speak, even though make it is a subjective, of course.
Yeah.
So, how does it impact that?
I gave the example of advanced societies where there seems to be a realization that if one sector is growing rich and the other is growing poor, somewhere along the line, the poor will eat the rich, as the late sage Awolowo puts it, that someday the poor will have nothing to eat but the rich, and they will come after the rich. So in those societies, even as they create under the free market policies, even as they create opportunity for the wealthy to grow wealthier and for the investors to grow more in economic activities, they take steps to cushion the effect of absence of that opportunity for those who do not have. So you have unemployment benefits, you have health benefits, which are open to everybody within the society. So in a worst case scenario, you can at least live. With unemployment benefit, you are sure you can find something to eat and stay alive while keeping hope alive and striving to be part of those who are advancing in economic activities in your society. What a society does is to make sure that nobody is left behind, and such social policies ensure that nobody is really left completely behind. We don't have them here. We don't have them here. So if you look at all sectors of the economy in Nigeria, you find that the largest part of the population is excluded, completely excluded. Now, we talked about gender equity or gender equality. Yes, there are laws providing for reserving parts. Part of this must be woman and this and that. But how much of it is being implemented, especially in the public sector? Not to talk about the private sector, because these policies are also supposed to affect private sector. How much of that are you noticing? Not much.
Does this apply? You also you mentioned access to education and healthcare
Yes,
a while ago as
yes.
well. Does it apply as well? Because education is expensive. Not everyone will have access to the same level of education, and the same thing goes for healthcare as well.
Exactly.
Healthcare at different levels costs certain amounts, and not everyone can afford it. Everywhere in the world, I must add, even
Yes,
those places
yes.
where we have social justice,
Yes.
that's enviable and can be copied or should be copied by
Social
other.
policies, yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Does this apply as well?
Yes, it does. You have rightly said education is expensive. What is the minimum wage now? 70,000, 75,000, etc. What can that do within our economy today? A bag of rice costs way more than that, except government subsidized ones that they ceremonially sell from time to time. It means the wage of the average Nigerian citizen is not enough. It's not wage enough to even take him home from work, not to talk of catering for his family. So education is expensive. How does it send children to school? Public schools are not as viable as they used to be in the past. But even those public schools are not fully available. Take your mind to the fact that majority of Nigerian citizens live outside the cities. How do they deal with education for their children? How do they deal with raising fees? How do they deal with sending children even beyond the primary education? Yeah, you have universal basic education, but are we seeing the effect? Is every young person within that category that is designed to be captured by UBE benefiting from it? The answer is no. Not to talk of health. In fact, as a Nigerian in the rural areas or outside the urban centers, you are almost certain to die if you have typhoid. You are almost certain to die if you suffer from any sickness that requires more than 10,000 to treat, because coming by 10,000 in a month is not easy under this economy. So it applies to the Nigerian society clearly, both in the area of health and the area of education, because it's earning power that informs what parents can do.
It is Canvas the Niger-Delta Roundtable. We're discussing, is there fairness in the world? Of course, this conversation is in relation to social justice. My guest is Professor Ritchard Wokocha. Go for a break. We'll return in a moment. The conversation continues. Do please stay with us.
Our yellow and black markers indicate pipeline and flow line right-of-way boundaries. Your activity could impact on the buried high-pressure hydrocarbon pipelines and flow lines, leading to possible leaks and explosion. Please keep off. Do not engage in sand mining or any form of excavation, pipeline vandalism, oil theft, and bush burning within pipeline and flow line right-of-way. Do not farm, trade, or locate any business on pipeline and flow line right-of-way. It is against the law to apportion land, sell, or build on pipeline and flow line right-of-way. Maintain a setback distance of at least 30 meters or about 100 feet from the right-of-way boundaries always. We care for your safety and that of the environment.
This message is brought to you by the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited, SPDC, operator of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC Limited, Total Energies, and Ajib Joint Venture.
Prof, you good?
Yeah.
Welcome back. Still Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable, brought to you by SPDC. I'm Daya. We're discussing, is there fairness in the world in relation to social justice, of course. My guest, once again, is Professor Ritchard Wokocha. And Prof, welcome again.
Thank you.
Considering, as you mentioned earlier, that social justice is planned for by societies. It's a deliberate act that implies that at some point it may not have existed, even in societies that are a beacon of social justice now. That said, as with most other things in life, if not every other thing, there must have been some viewpoints on this, even philosophical viewpoints on this. What are some of these philosophical viewpoints on fairness and social justice?
You know, you have economic philosophies that have informed different stages of human development. And you have the free market. First, we began with the agrarian society because the development into society led to planning our consumption instead of depending on nature, as I said earlier. So first you had the agrarian society where we had to cultivate what we had to consume, and you found that everything was centered on land ownership. You had lots of the manure, you had peasants, you have all manner of those who did not own lands, who had to work for those who owned land in order to survive and have what they themselves will eat. So we have grown from that agrarian economy to the philosophy where this average citizen claimed the right to ownership of society. And so we moved on to the libertarian environment, what I like to call the constitutional environment, where everybody is a stakeholder, and efforts became directed at ensuring social justice and equal opportunity for everybody. Earlier, I mentioned the fact that man predates organized society and man predates the current sovereign societies or sovereign states that we have. And man is at the center of all policies. So you have philosophies that center on man, that says, look, both government and the state are made for man. And whatever policies we undertake must reflect the well-being of man. Otherwise, then members of that society will be at liberty to revolutionarily upturn that policy and institute a new system that will cater more effectively and fairly for their needs. So we have moved from one stage to the other, and at every point you have change in focus and change in philosophical view to management of the economy and ensuring social justice. At the moment, every citizen is an equal stakeholder in his society, and government policies are driven by that philosophy to ensure that nobody is left behind because everybody has equal stake in the society. So even as government formulates policies that will enable those who can advance to advance, government has to ensure that others do not drop below stakeholders' level, and so efforts are made to sustain them within the society.
What is the effect of social justice on a society? I mean, maybe I think I'd like to rephrase that question, but still along the same lines. What would be the effect of social justice on the Niger-Delta, for example, as a society?
Social justice on the Niger-Delta environment will lead to a lot of things that will be different from what you have today. Use the example of my reference to First Republic and the Western society. And if you have to have social justice within the Niger-Delta, what it will translate to is that economic activities, which are much, and Niger-Delta is a hub of the Nigerian monosectoral economy, it will mean that economic activities within the Niger-Delta will reflect on the life of the average Niger-Delta. It will mean that members of the society within the Niger-Delta will have some level of input and outcome from economic policies of the Nigerian state within the Niger-Delta. So take, for example, that with the increase in resources Nigerian state is generating from Niger-Delta, that there is increase in public investment in education in the Niger-Delta. It means that larger number of citizens or larger space will be covered on the front of education. Imagine that it translates to increased investment in health in the area. It also means that a larger population of the Niger-Delta people, or there will be an increased level of access to health by the Niger-Delta people within the context of the economic policy of the government. So you are pursuing development of Nigerian society by raising income within the Niger-Delta, and the Niger-Delta people are seeing the effect on them. So if, as PIA has tried to do, you commit part of the money to the communities and address key social challenges that they have within the society, employment will reduce, access to health will increase, access to education will increase, access to economic opportunities will also increase. So if more Niger Delta people are participating at the stream of oil production that they can participate in, the natural consequence will be that there will be greater sense of ownership, there will be greater harmony within the economic activities or within that oil sector within the Niger Delta, because the new opportunities created by that application of social justice or policies that enhance social justice within the region will enable the people of that region feel sense of ownership of the economic activities. They will protect it and they will benefit from it, and the state will also benefit from the harmony that exists in the sector. There will be a reduction in interference with production in the area, because the society, immediate societies that are affected feel the impact of improvement in production. If, as a local person or as citizens within the region, every time the oil companies or investors make more income in the oil, you'll find corresponding increase in what comes back to the society. They themselves will strive to create or ensure improvement in resource earning within the economy in the Niger Delta. So rather than have fights within the region affecting achievement of government target by the economic policy or policies of the government within the region, you will find the region rather contributing to increase harmony and increase opportunity for larger income, as it will also affect them.
What roles do governments and other groups like NGOs, even international organizations, what roles do they play in promoting fairness?
A lot of roles. As we said at the beginning, social justice is a planned thing because society has government and is governed, therefore, by government. Government is an institution operated by human beings that works by policy. So government has key role because policies are laid by law and laws are made by government. So whatever social goal or whatever level of social justice that society intends to achieve within a legal system is the primary responsibility of the government to come up with policies. Now, all the other agents of development you have mentioned have roles to play. The government is far removed. Yes, there is local government, there is state government, but they are all operating from the administrative headquarters. The NGOs have greater opportunities to interface with the people and know better what the challenges of the people are. I agree that every ward has a representative in council that should be able to, but how often do they hear from the wards, citizens in the wards they represent? The NGO interfaces better with society because they are part of society. And so they are better able to know what the challenges are, and they are better able to recommend solutions that will solve actual challenges within the society. So NGOs have roles to play as well. In fact, a place that has effective participation of NGOs will likely have policies that are more realistic and that will reflect the challenges and solutions of the people within that environment. So there is every likelihood that you will better attain social justice within that environment than the one that does not have such independent interfaces with the citizenry of that society. Do international organizations like UN have a role to play? Yes. In every human association, one of the key things that coming together creates is opportunity for peer review. If at that point where nations come together, you formulate ideas about what is important and importance of certain policies and certain goals, it enables the individual nations, and that's what the World Day of Social Justice is about. You formulate policies that every member state undertakes to implement within their own state. So even in the interaction between nations, the northern and southern hemisphere, as you know, there is economic disparity and all that. And the social justice resolution encourages the General Secretary of the United Nations to create opportunity in the interface of nations to realize this. Economic activities between the North and South is like social justice policies within the state. Now, at the international level, we must talk of policies that enable a fair opportunity of participation in trade from the larger part of the southern nations fall within the third world and the rest of them. So the increasing disparity between the not developed societies and the undeveloped societies requires attention. And this 20th of February is a day to also reflect that and see how, through international trade, greater opportunity for fairness can be instituted. So at the collective level of international organizations, desirable goals are formulated. Member nations take it home to try to reflect it in national policies. And at the international level, at the level of international engagement, that fairness is also advanced. Opportunity is created to increase fairness in dealings between the developed and non-developed societies.
What examples of policies or example of a policy or initiative exist that can or have promoted social justice?
You have the World Trade Organization. At every international forum, you have the argument about imbalance in trade between the advanced economies and the non-advanced economies, and the call for fairness. I agree that as a sovereign nation, the responsibility is primarily yours. The protection America provides for its farmers is not ordered by the United Nations. So their capacity to provide those protections and opportunities for their farmers leads to increased agricultural activities and provides greater market for them, because with American dominance and American participation or influence in different nations comes American economic activities in those places. So nations are primarily responsible for creating the environment under which their people can both aspire and improve their economic activities. But yes, at the international level, there is need, and that is what has been stressed in every international forum. There is need for some improvement in the fairness with which international trade and activities are carried on. Why do we have 3 to 4 refineries in Nigeria and our oil is refined outside? The United Nations does not decide our oil policy. It will not take a General Assembly session for us to decide to build new refineries or end the existing ones, build new ones, or fix the existing ones. But both at the international level and at national level, we have keyed into what we consider cheaper for the government. And so government is, we can make more revenue by exporting the oil and importing finished product. But we know that that is how our story of a crumbling state began. From when our economy was strong, we were refining and selling finished product. And gradually we watched our implementation of our policies fall to the point where we are no longer refining. And so you sell primary product for a little amount and you buy finished product at a much larger amount that is in the interest of the external sector that is selling it to you. So consistently, there has been that call, and we have been striving for some level of balance and level of fairness in economic activities. But it's a responsibility we have to take, because UN or America does not have to formulate our economic policies. We should look at our shortcomings and address them with national policies.
No doubt, governments, the Nigerian government, or even local governments within the Niger-Delta, NGOs, international organizations have humongous roles to play. But how about the individuals in Nigeria, individuals within the Niger-Delta? What roles can they play to promote social justice and fairness
in our society? Well, quite a lot of role too. There is the saying that people get the government they deserve. And I think it was J.F. Kennedy that said the price you pay for good governance is vigilance. If citizens are vigilant, they are likely to create some level of pressure on their government that will improve circumstances within that society and perhaps increase social justice. Until the Niger-Delta cried out, or until people of the Niger-Delta cried out and took actions, including challenging the law and engaging in illegal activities or fighting back against the state, nobody was conscious of what the region was suffering. It took speaking out to call the attention not only of the nation but the international community to what was going on in the Niger-Delta. And that led to national policies, creation of development boards and other things to try to address those social justice challenges that the region had made open. So citizens have a lot of role to play. Government will not come and tell me, Wokocha, come and participate in the economy, come and form the... We need to develop the consciousness. So it is both responsibility of regional governments and responsibility of NGOs and others to improve the consciousness of people within the regions on what they can do and how they can partake in the economic activities going on around them in order to enhance social justice within the sector. The individuals have to deliberately make effort to invest in the right sector that will enable them enhance their economic capacity from economic activities and policies that are being implemented around them. But more especially because economic participation and economic activities are informed by availability of capital. At the least, they need to be vigilant and draw attention of government, both at regional level and at national level, to issues of social justice that are reducing or that are affecting their ability to benefit from social justice objectives of policies within their nation. So vigilance is key word for them and deliberate participation.
My final question, is social justice and fairness attainable?
They are attainable because, as I said, the difference between corporate entities and individual entities is that individuals operate by luck and chance, but social entities operate by deliberate policies. Nations that have succeeded around the world have succeeded from implementation of policies. There is nothing luck, there is nothing chance about attainment of social justice. It's entirely about planning and implementation of deliberate policies. So it is even more attainable than natural justice that is not coming from government policy. So fairness is attainable, very much attainable. That is why the Bill of Rights exists in the constitutions of most countries in the world, to try and create for the individual a level of protection that he can assert by approaching the courts to ensure that he gets them. Now, on the economic front, because economic policies that create the environment within which the individual can advance his entitlement and his attainment of social justice, because those policies are government policies, it is possible to achieve them, easier and more possible to achieve them. It's a question of responsibility. The difference between Nigeria having similar social objectives and similar social justice policies as America and are not attaining even the one that America has attained. It's about seriousness of government. How much and how effectively do we implement policies? If we implement them well, we will get the objectives that was the target of the policy when it was formulated. So it's not that we do not have policies that are designed to enhance social justice in our society. We have implemented them poorly, extremely poorly, and we have not had a responsible enough government that is ensuring supervision of all sectors of its implementation organs to ensure that those who are in those sectors take them seriously. And as we used to say on Nigerian Info and elsewhere, unless violation of the law is made expensive, more and more people will engage in them. And so in societies like Nigeria, everybody will try to break the law, everybody will try to bend the law to see how much comes into their pocket. What is in it for me is the operative norm, and not what are we pursuing as a society. Now, the fluidity of the Nigerian environment and the unseriousness of monitoring agents and regulatory authorities is what drives this commitment to what is in it for me. The difference between the United States society and the Nigerian society is simply implementation. The policies are similar, but the goals and achievement of the policies rest on how effectively the governments and their organs implement them.
And that's a wrap on this episode of Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable, brought to you by SPDC. We've discussed, is there fairness in the world? I think from the conversation we've had thus far, I can say yes, there is. And the last question, can social justice be attained, or fairness in Nigeria, or even the Niger-Delta for that matter? The answer is a resounding yes. Thanks to my guest, Professor Ritchard Wokocha. Prof, it's been a pleasure having you here once again.
Great pleasure. Great pleasure.
I'm Adedayo Lushakin. Thank you for joining us once again on this edition of Canvas and Niger-Delta Roundtable. Look out for fresh episodes across our various social media channels and conventional media outlets as well. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye for now.